Hello, everybody. Petra here. Welcome back. Today, I have a story for you. A story about the frequency of miracles. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to attract miracles while others, despite working just as hard, only attract more struggle? What if I told you that you aren't living in a world of objects and events, but in a world of frequencies? Most of us are walking through the life tuned into the frequency of luck, a static field station that broadcasts what's missing, what's broken, and what is coming to hurt us. It's a low, heavy hum that keeps us in survival mode. But there is another station. It's high, it's clear, and it changes the very atoms of your reality. Today, we aren't just going to talk about gratitude, we are going to find its pulse. We are going to tune your life to the frequency of the miraculous. If you stay with me until the end of this journey, you won't just feel better. You will see the world differently. You will realize that you haven't been waiting for the world to change. The world has been waiting for you to change your tune. And now, the story. The Architect of Shadows. Once there was a man named Elias. Elias was a successful man by the world's standards. He had a solid desk, a steady income, and a house with a view. But inside that house, Elias lived in a hall of mirrors where every reflection showed a flaw. When he looked at his career, he didn't see achievement. He saw the shadow of the man who might replace him. When he looked at his children, he didn't see their wonder. He saw his own anxiety for their future. Elias was a prisoner of linear time. In linear time, happiness is always over there, just past the next promotion, tucked behind the final mortgage payment, or waiting on the other side of a weekend that never seems to last. He lived in the when then cycle. When I have enough, then I will be at peace. When I am safe, then I will be grateful. One night, exhausted by the weight of his own not enoughness, Elias fell into a dream that felt more real than his waking life. He stood in a vast, silent hall stretching into infinity. It was filled with millions of small wooden drawers. The air smelled of old paper and missed opportunities. At the center stood a figure wrapped in a coat the color of a twilight. The keeper. What is this place? Elias asked, his voice echoing. This is the warehouse of the acknowledged, the keeper replied. Every blessing sent to your doorstep that you failed to tune in is stored here. Because you didn't recognize them, they couldn't enter your reality. They are gifts that were never opened. Elias pulled open a drawer. Inside was a glow he recognized. The feeling of a morning 3 years ago when the sign hit his kitchen table just right. He remembered that morning, but he remembered choosing to worry about an email instead of feeling the warmth. He closed the drawer, a knot forming in his throat. The keeper handed Elias a small, heavy tuning fork made of dark, cold metal. This is your heart, the keeper said. Right now, it's vibrating at the frequency of luck. It's a heavy note, Elias. It creates a density around you that repels the very things you pray for. Even if I gave you the entire world right now, you would only feel its weight, not its beauty. You are physically incapable of experiencing what you aren't attuned to. Elias struck the fork against his palm. He didn't ring. It made a dull, tugging sound that vibrated uncomfortably in his teeth. How do I change the note? Elias whispered. I've tried being positive. I've said the words thank you 1,000 times. Gratitude is not a social etiquette, the keeper said, leaning in. It's not a thank you directed outward to a distant god or a lucky star. It's an internal recognition of the divine already present. To change the note, you must perform the 3 acts of recognition. Suddenly, the hall vanished. Elias found himself back in his own bedroom, watching his own sleeping body. The room was quiet, save for the rhythmic sound of his own breathing. Look at that, the keeper said, pointing to Elias's chest. Most people think they are doing the breathing. They think it's a chore the body performs. But look closer. Look at the ancestry of that air. Elias watched as the air entered his lungs. He saw in a flash of insight the forest smiles without him ever having to ask it. He realized he had never heard a single breath. He hadn't worked for it, hadn't bought it, and couldn't manufacture it. It was a sheer, unaltered gift given to him 20,000 times a day. He felt a wave of profound humility. He thought of all the times he complained about his life while his lungs were tirelessly fighting to keep him in it. For the first time, he didn't just think thanks. He felt a surge of warmth in his chest. He felt the privilege of existing. The tuning fork in his hand began to glow. When he tapped it now, it let out a clear, crystalline chime. The frequency was rising. The scene shifted again. Now Elias was forced to look at the screen showing the hardest moments of his life. He saw the day his first business collapsed. He saw the face of the person who had walked out on him when he needed them most. Usually these memories made his stomach tighten with bitterness. Find the frequency here, the keeper challenged. If you can only be grateful for the good, you are a slave to circumstance. To be free, you must find the grace in the bad. Elias looked at his business failure. For the first time, he saw that the collapse had stripped away his arrogance. It had forced him to start over with a new set of skills he now used every day. He looked at the heartbreak and realized that the pain had cracked his heart open, making him a more compassionate father and a more patient friend. He realized that gratitude is the ability to see the seed of equal benefit in every tragedy. It's the alchemy that turns leaden memories into golden wisdom. As he forgave his past and thanked it for the armor he gave him, the tuning fork began to vibrate so intensely it warmed his entire arm. The grey room was no longer grey. It was pulsing with a soft golden light. Now, the keeper said, his voice becoming a resonant hum, the final secret. Most humans are reactionary. They wait for something good to happen before they feel the emotion. They are waiting for the evidence before they offer the praise, but it is the wrong way around. Elias was told to think of his deepest longing, a dream he had almost given up on. Don't wish for it, the keeper commanded. That only broadcasts that you don't have it. Instead, feel the gratitude for it as if it is already a finished fact in your life. Give thanks for the arrival before the ship is even in the harbor. Elias closed his eyes. He imagined his dream. He didn't just see it, he felt the relief in his shoulders. He felt the smile on his face. He felt the deep, settled peace of "it is done." He whispered "thank you" to a future that hadn't arrived yet, but felt more real than the floor beneath his feet. In that moment, the tuning fork didn't just ring, it shattered into pure, blinding light. Elias wasn't holding the frequency anymore, he was the frequency. He woke up in his bed, the sun hitting the table, and for the first time in his life, he didn't reach for his phone, he reached for his breath. Elia sat on the edge of his bed, the silence of the room no longer feeling empty, but full, like a vessel waiting to be poured into. He looked at his hands. They were the same hands that had typed stressed mails the night before, yet they felt different. They felt like tools of creation rather than instruments of survival. He walked to the kitchen. Usually, this way where the grey room of his mind began to build itself, worrying about the commute, the coughing being too cold, the thinking of the clock. But as he reached for a glass of water, he stopped. He didn't just drink, he recognized the water. He felt the cool miracle of it hitting his throat, a gift from the earth he had taken for granted for 40 years. He was no longer waiting for his life to start, he was finally attending the party. When he arrived at the office, the shadow of the man who might replace him was still there, sitting 3 desks down. But the frequency had changed. Instead of feeling a contraction in his chest, Elias felt a strange, quiet compassion. He saw the stress in the other man's shoulders, the same weight he had carried yesterday. Elias did something he hadn't done in years. He walked over, placed a hand on the man's shoulder, and offered a genuine word of encouragement. He wasn't competing for a finite amount of success anymore. He was attuned to an infinite station. That afternoon, a crisis hit. A lost contract. A broken deadline. Usually, this would have sent Elias into a tailspin of luck. Instead, he closed his eyes for 3 seconds, found the ancestry of his oxygen, and asked, "Where is the seed of equal benefit in this?" By staying in the frequency of the solution rather than the problem, he saw a path through the mess that everyone else was too panicked to notice. He wasn't working harder, he was working lighter. Weeks passed. The miracles began to arrive, but not in the way he expected. They didn't fall from the sky like lightning, they grew like a garden. Because he was no longer broadcasting not enough, the world stopped reflecting not enough back to him. People were drawn to him. Opportunities that had been stuck in the warehouse seemed to find his new address. His children didn't see a distracted provider anymore. They saw a father who was actually there. One evening, Elias stood on his porch, looking at the same view he had had for a decade. He realized that the house hadn't changed, the bank account hadn't doubled, and the world was still chaotic, but the static was gone. He pulled an invisible tuning fork from the air and struck it against his heart. This time there was no thud. The entire neighborhood seemed to ring with a note. He finally understood. The frequency of the miraculous isn't a place you go. It is the clarity with which you finally decide to stay. Well, now the story is finished, but just a smaller reflection. What Elias discovered in that dream is what modern neuroscience is now beginning to confirm. We used to think gratitude just as an emotion, but it's actually a biological retuning. When you switch into the frequency of gratitude, your nervous system undergoes a radical transformation. You move out of the survival state and you go into the growth state. In fact, your heart, well, the rhythm becomes coherent. Instead of the jagged, chaotic spikes of stress, your heartbeats form a smooth, wave like pattern. You become a magnet for coherence. For this regard your brain, the higher brain, the frontal lobe, comes online. This is the part of you that sees solution, opportunities, and connection that were invisible to you when you were stressed. At last, you stop being a receiver of whatever life throws at you, and you become a broadcaster. You are no longer saying to the universe, I need. You are saying, I am. Gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. When you say thank you and truly feel it from the depths of your cells, you are telling the universe, I already have this. And the universe, which acts as a mirror to your internal state, has no choice but to respond. Yes, you do. Now, as we come to the end of this journey, I don't want you to just turn off this video and go back to the grey room of your daily worries. I want you to anchor this frequency right now. Look around the space you are in. Don't look for the big things. Look for the silent servants. Find the three things that have been supporting you without you ever noticing. Perhaps it's the chair holding your weight, the roof shielding you from the elements, or the incredible technology that allows my voice to reach your ears across the world. If this story has shifted something within you, I invite you to join our circle of frequency. In the comments below, write one thing, just one, you are grateful for, but I want you to write it as if it is a living, breathing miracle. Don't just say, I'm grateful for my cat, for example, but say, I'm grateful for the tiny heartbeat of my companion that reminds me I'm never alone. By sharing your gratitude, you aren't just typing words. You are amplifying this frequency for every other person who watches this. If this story shifted something in you, hit the like button to help this frequency reach someone else who might be trapped in the grey room today. And if you want to continue this journey of waking up to the miraculous, subscribe and join our community of architects. We aren't just watching videos, we are rewriting our reality, one breath at a time.